On November 19, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln made one of the most famous speeches in American history, the Gettysburg Address. Written to commemorate the soldiers who died in the Battle of Gettysburg, the opening lines: 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, are some of the greatest expressions of American democracy ever written. 2,500 years ago, another famous speech was made, the Epitaphios Logos. Written by Pericles in 431 BC, the Epitaphios Logos, or Funeral Oration, was delivered to commemorate the Athenian soldiers who died in the first year of the Peloponnesian War. We will examine the striking similarities between Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Pericles' Funeral Oration. Both were leaders of a democratic state, both saw their democracies as exceptional, and both were delivering funeral orations to commemorate soldiers who died on the battlefield. We will also examine other Greek influences on Abraham Lincoln and the impact both speeches have had around the world. Lincoln delivered the speech on the afternoon of November 19, 1863, during a formal dedication of Soldiers' National Cemetery, now known as Gettysburg National Cemetery. The dedication took place in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where the Battle of Gettysburg was fought between July 1st and July 3rd, 1863. In the battle, Union General George Meade's Army of the Potomac defeated Confederate General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, ending Lee's attempt to invade the North. This was the Civil War's deadliest battle, resulting in over 50,000 Confederate and Union Army casualties. The battle also changed the course of the war in the Union's favor. The battle was so monumental and its result so profound that a lasting statement was needed to mark the burial of the dead. An invitation went out to Edward Everett, the most famous orator of the time. A former U.S. Senator and Governor of Massachusetts, Everett's speech was a long, 2-hour address that focused on the significance of the Battle of Gettysburg and the need to preserve the Union. It also drew parallels between the Civil War and events in ancient Greece. Unfortunately for Everett, another invited speaker would steal his spotlight: Abraham Lincoln. In comparison, Lincoln's 272-word speech was so brief it surprised the audience and drew criticism from his opposition. Eventually, though, it would be recognized as one of the greatest speeches of all time, and a masterpiece of prose poetry. The following day, Everett wrote to Lincoln, "I wish that I could flatter myself that I had come as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes." Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address to honor the fallen Union soldiers who died at Gettysburg and to confirm the nation's commitment to the principles of liberty and equality. More importantly, Lincoln knew he had to inspire the people to continue to fight.
407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
The ancient Greeks invented the idea of a public eulogy for the dead. Demosthenes, one of the ancient world's greatest orators, said of the Athenians, "They alone in the world deliver funeral orations for citizens who have died for their country." By the late 5th century BC, honoring those who had died in war had practically become an annual Athenian tradition. First, a public funeral lasted for 3 days, so that offerings could be made. Then a funeral procession was held, followed by a speech delivered by a prominent citizen chosen by the state. Pericles' funeral oration was part of this annual tradition, and it was delivered in 431 BC to honor the first Athenian soldiers who died in the Peloponnesian War. The first year of the war had not gone well for Athens. The surrounding lands were burned, the homes destroyed, and the financial costs were bankrupting the city. And even worse, the Spartans showed no signs of relenting. Thucydides tells us Pericles was chosen by the city as the wisest and most esteemed to deliver the eulogy. In his speech, Pericles praised the dead and asked the people of Athens to remember their ancestors. He also spoke of the greatness of Athenian democracy, emphasizing its commitment to freedom, equality, and the pursuit of excellence. Most importantly, Pericles explained to his audience why their suffering was justified and why their perseverance to fight a tough war with Sparta was necessary. Although Lincoln never directly referenced Pericles in his Gettysburg Address, most historians note the structural and conceptual similarities between the two speeches. Consciously or not, Lincoln turned back to ancient Greece for inspiration. For example, Lincoln touched on their ancestors with the opening,
"407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal."
Pericles did the same.
"I shall begin with our ancestors. They dwelt in this country from generation to generation and handed prosperity down to us by their valor."
Lincoln recognized those who fought.
"The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract."
Again, Pericles did the same.
"For they gave their lives for the common good, and thereby won for themselves the praise that never grows old, and the most distinguished of all graves."
But there is a deeper connection between both speeches. First, there is the use of pathos to evoke emotions from the audience. Pericles spoke with great admiration and respect for the fallen soldiers, describing their bravery and sacrifice in vivid terms.
Thus, choosing to die resisting, rather than to live submitting, they fled from dishonor and met danger face to face, not out of fear, but out of glory.
Lincoln used pathos as well.
"We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live."
Another characteristic both speeches share is the use of antithesis. Pericles famously utilized antithesis to create a clear contrast between Athens and Sparta.
"And if with habits of ease and courage of nature we are still willing to fight, are we not better prepared for war than those who only know hardship enforced by law?"
Lincoln used the same technique when declaring the dead soldiers will gain immortality.
"These dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth."
The final characteristic both share is anaphora, or the repetition of a word and phrase, such as "we are."
"Our Constitution does not copy the laws of neighboring states. We are rather a model to others than imitators of them. We are not angry with our neighbor for doing what he likes."
Lincoln did as well.
"Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war."
Another example of Greek influence is Euclid and his principles of geometry. Even though he is one of the greatest mathematicians of the ancient world, little is known about Euclid except that he lived in Alexandria, Egypt, during the reign of Ptolemy I, and probably taught at the Great Library. Lincoln used Euclid's 6 elements to construct the Gettysburg Address. 1. Enunciation.
"Now we are engaged in a great civil war."
2. Exposition.
we are met on a great battlefield of that war.
3. Specification.
We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives,
4. Construction.
the brave men, living and dead, who struggled here,
5. Proof.
to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced.
6. Conclusion.
That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government shall not perish from the earth.
In the decades following Lincoln's death, the Gettysburg Address became revered. The construction of the Lincoln Memorial in 1922 helped solidify its place in the national consciousness, with a speech inscribed in its marble walls. It became a staple of American education, often memorized by school children and cited by politicians in moments of national reflection. By the 20th century, the address had transcended its wartime origins to symbolize American democratic values globally. As for Pericles' Epitaphios Logos, it has been the gold standard not only of public memorials, but of all public speeches from the day it was first delivered. It is a foundational text for democratic ideas, including equality, freedom, the rule of law, and the need to prioritize the common good over individual interests. The Funeral Oration has inspired countless leaders and will continue to do so in the future. More importantly, it serves as a model for democratic states, even to this day. Both the Gettysburg Address and the Funeral Oration were designed to honor fallen soldiers in a time of war. And just as importantly, both speeches were designed to persuade the audience to continue fighting and to continue defending freedom and democracy.